nomination for anyone on the commission to nominate a chair for the evening, please.
I would like to nominate Susan Klaus-Smith.
And
I'll second.
Thank you. And is Commissioner Smith willing to serve in that capacity?
This is on? Yep.
Yep.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. We just have a vote for that, please. We have a motion and a second. All those signifying aye, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Dennis, before we move on,
Mhm.
I don't have the necessary packet for tonight.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think Beverly can assist you with that.
Yeah, thank you. Mhm. Oh, no, you Yes, I just needed the chair's packet. Thank you very much. Okay, sorry. Thank you for your patience. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the June 15th public hearing for the City of Tampa's Architectural Review Commission. Welcome, everyone. I'm Susan Klaus-Smith, Chair of the Commission for this evening. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentations, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, which I believe we have two, correct? Either end?
They're right here.
Oh, I'm sorry, right here, sorry. When coming to the microphones, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. The staff will present the staff report, and then your commissioners will ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. When you do come to the microphone, please state and spell your name clearly if you're here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments, because 3 minutes goes by very quickly, and it certainly does. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then the public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the city ordinance, chapter 27 of the city zoning code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, the Historic Preservation Development Review comments, and the testimony given at the public hearing. The ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner and agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones. And then I would like my fellow commissioners to introduce yourselves, and I'll start with my reads.
Hi, I'm Ashley Dukibus. I'm an attorney.
Tamara Rice, architect.
Shauna Boyd, interior designer.
Stephen Sutton, architect. I also hold the architectural historian chair.
And just for the record, I am also a licensed architect. And then I'd like our staff, Dennis Fernandez. I didn't see Ron Vila here.
He's outside.
He's the outside, okay. Elaine's not here today.
Yeah, she's
Oh,
right
she
here.
is back there.
Yeah, we're far away.
And then Beverly Jawuzak, and our attorney tonight is,
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle.
I'm sorry.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll go to our first, oh no, I'm sorry. We will go to, sorry, out of order. We will go to the silent roll call.
We will complete the silent roll call. Next activity would be the reading of the minutes from March 2nd, please.
Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes from March 2nd?
I do. I move that we approve the minutes as presented of the meeting of March 2nd, 2020.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, the minutes are approved from March 2nd.
Thank you, Commissioners. I do have just a couple announcements this evening. This is Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. We did have an additional public hearing scheduled for next Wednesday, June 24th. So it's not this coming Wednesday, the 17th. We're still having our June 17th meeting, but on the 24th, we're going to be canceling that meeting. So we're going to be handling the cycles that we have skipped between tonight's public hearing and this Wednesday, June 17th public hearing. We did have the election of officers scheduled in accordance with your rules, but you do have your chair and vice chair that are not present today. If it's the pleasure of the board, I would recommend just continuing that to July 8th, and we can deal with it when we have a more complete board.
Do you have a motion to move the election of officers to the next meeting date when our vice chair and/or chair is present?
I second.
Well, we have to
No,
make
I
a
asked
motion.
for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to move the election of officers to the July 8th meeting, I believe you said. Second?
Correct.
Yes.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion is passed.
I also have the staff approvals for March, April, and May of 2020, which I will enter into the record for this evening's hearing, and you have a copy of those in your packets as well. Next, we'll have conflicts of interest and ex parte communication. Our attorney will facilitate that.
Good afternoon, Maria Pettis-Mackel with the City Attorney's Office. At this time, can any of the commissioners state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest based on the items that are on the agenda? And just for the record, I don't see any
No.
comments from any of the commissioners.
No.
Next, can any of the commissioners state whether or not they've had any ex parte communication regarding the items that are on the agenda?
No.
No.
And hearing none, that concludes my portion of this agenda item.
Thank you.
No.
Moving on to continuations, we do have two continuations, one of which is on the agenda and one of which came over the weekend. The first case is ARC 20-105 for the property located at 413 East Forest Avenue. The agent is requesting to continue to July 13th. We will need a motion for that.
We hear a motion for,
I'd like to move to grant a continuance in case ARC 20-105 for the property located at 413 East Forest Avenue to the July 13th public hearing at 6 p.m.
have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Thank you. The second continuance is ARC 20-162 for the property at 5703 North Central Avenue, and the agent is requesting to continue that to July the 8th at 6 p.m. The public hearing, please.
I'd like to make a motion to grant a continuance in case ARC 20-162 for the property located at 5703 North Central Avenue to the July 8th public hearing at 6 p.m.
Have
I
a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
And just as a footnote to that, with those two cases, we do have a full cycle for the July 8th and 13th public hearings. So any cases this evening or Wednesday evening that do need to continue for some reason, we'll have to continue to the August cycle of cases in order for us to properly manage those. Okay, with that, I believe we are ready for the swear-in. So anyone who is going to be presenting or testifying at today's hearing, including staff, please stand for the swearing. And with that, we're ready for the first case, ARC 20-154.
Good evening, Commissioners. Am I audible on this? That looks like a no. Can you hear me now? Okay. Am I audible now? Okay, try that. This is Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. This item is case number ARC 20-154, and the address is 5708 North Central Avenue. This is in the Seminole Heights Historic District. This application is for a contributing building that was built circa 1926. The applicant has requested an addition. Okay. The applicant's requested an addition and to the primary structure and to, new construction for an accessory structure, as along with the corresponding site improvements. There I am. So at this time, I'll move to the photo presentation here. Do you have the images on your screens? Okay. So this is the 1920s era Sanborn Map of this section of the Seminole Heights Historic District. The subject property is located here in green. You can see it's a fairly small house at that time. There's an open porch to the south, and looks like an open rear porch and a small accessory building off the alley. This is on Central Avenue between Henry and Powhatan. And the Garden Club is now located on this property. It wasn't built until 1939. This is the present day aerial of the area, and there's a lot of green here, but this green box is where the subject property is today, off Central, with Henry and Powhatan there. This is the front of the house at 5708 Central Avenue. So we're looking west at the front of it from the street. This is the house's north side. This is on the south side where the open porch is. And then this is looking at the rear of the house as it stands today. You can note that this area is actually an addition onto the original footprint of the house, and then there's an accessory structure here on the north side of the lot. And this is an image that I liked, showing some of the details of the architecture on the house. So you get the you can see the windows and their casing. You can see the profile of the siding and the excuse me, the brackets that are here framing the front door. This is the property just to the south, and this is the house to the north. And across the street, looking to the east, this photo is looking south along Central Avenue. You can see the portion of the subject property would be to your right. And then looking north on Central, the subject site would be to your left. Moving around to the alley, this is the existing fence and gate located at the property in the alley. And if you're looking, this is south down the alley, have the subject site to your left. And then looking east up the alley toward Henry Avenue and the Garden Center here, the subject property to your right. And at this time, I would like to ask the applicant to come forward and give her presentation.
I'm the owner of the house. Are you able to see?
Can we help her zoom in a little bit? That's great.
Okay.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me? All right. This is the existing structure. 1926 portion is up here, 2007 addition from previous owner back here. This is the existing shed and carport. We're proposing to add on to the 2007 addition. It's approximately 350 square feet off the back. This shows us coming out a little closer to the property line, but we're actually going to stay in line with the 2007 addition. Because we're bumping this out, we have to remove the existing shed and carport. So we're going to do an existing or a new shed over in this portion. This is the floor plan. This is the proposed section. And then this is the shed area. These are the north and,
Can we rotate those drawings?
oh, I'm sorry.
please? Thank you.
Is that better?
I know it's hard to figure it out sometimes.
Okay. This is the south and north elevation. We're proposing to use the same materials as existing. And this is the new section. This is the east and west elevation. This shows the existing, actually. This is the portion that will be bumped out. We're proposing to remove these windows and actually reuse them once we bump it out. So the windows will be the same size and the elevation will look the same on that side. This is the proposed shed. And we'll use similar architectural details to the neighborhood. This is a larger version of the west elevation, the existing. These are the windows that are going to be reused. And the new portion, they had asked for the dimensions of this molding, which is 10.5 inches existing, and we'll duplicate that in the new section. This is a crude window section drawn, and they'll all match existing. They'll all be wood, and the Muntin layout will be similar to existing. These are the proposed shed brackets. They'll also match existing, and also the gable vent to match existing on the main house. And then this is the proposed shed door elevation. Here is the exterior wall section, again to match existing, with the wood siding to match existing. And this is a detail of the 4-inch cedar siding, which we'll also plan to use cedar. And it'll also be 4 inches to match the rest. The roofing will be architectural asphalt shingles. It's in a dark gray, which is the same as the rest of the house. And then this is an example of the kind of strap hinge that we propose using on the doors to the shed. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Commissioners, staff finds that this application is consistent with the Seminole Heights design guidelines per plans dated May 29th. And the applicant presented additional details here this evening that were requested on the staff report. And I'm available if you have any comments or questions.
Thank you.
now open the hearing to public comments in this case. If you wish to speak, please do. How are we doing this tonight in terms of people wanting to line up, just alternate locations? Right. In the seats behind the podiums? Okay, sorry, just need to clarify. So if you wish to speak in this matter tonight, if you would take a position in either one of the podiums and then a seat behind it, we could, no one interested? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, or the public comment period, and we will now allow the commissioners to ask questions regarding the case. You want to start? We'll start with Commissioner Sutton.
Thank you very much. Please, if you may, I'd like to revisit some of your detailing for both the house and the shed structure that you have.
Okay.
One of the items that either flew past me or was not addressed was the nature of your soffits, the underside or the visible part of the roof structure. What are you planning to do both on the house and on your shed structure, and how does that relate to the existing house?
On the main house, we're planning on using the same, I actually don't know that I have a photo of it. It's a 3-foot soffit, so we'll use trusses, and we'll end those trusses at the wall area, and then there'll be tails that come out. They have, I think it's about 4-inch or so slats of wood that will duplicate that as well. So it looks exactly
So it's a
like the main
beaded board
house.
effect?
It is, yes.
Are you going to be using the same level of detailing on your shed?
We're planning on it. I haven't really looked into it in detail, though.
The other item I'd like to address is how your addition meets the ground in terms of its foundation. The elevations indicate that it almost looks like it's siding all the way down to the ground. Is that correct?
No, the siding goes down to about, I'd say about 18 inches before the ground, and then there's a brick, and we would match the existing brick pattern. The engineer that I am using suggested doing, I think it's like CMU piers, and then we'd probably have to use thin brick to match the regular size brick on those little areas, so it ties in together and it looks consistent.
So it'll be much the same crawl space effect, open
That's
crawl
correct.
space that you have on the main building.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I don't have any additional questions.
Okay. Commissioner Rice?
You said you were gonna move some of the windows, but then you also have additional new windows, correct?
We're just planning on removing the one,
pair?
the one pair back here, and then just pushing it back.
That's it for windows?
There are some new windows on the new section. They will match existing. They will all be wood and the Munton style, and I think they're either 3/1 or 4/1, but they'll match existing as well.
Okay, same materials, they're wood?
Yes, that's
same
correct.
Setback, okay.
Yep.
All right. I think that's my questions.
I don't have any additional questions.
So could you actually put your elevations back up?
Yeah.
Because I actually have questions about
Sure.
the windows and the detailing as well. So what I'm looking for is the north elevation,
Okay.
which I believe
This
is the
is
one
lower
that
on
is, can we zoom in, please? Can you point where the new addition is? I think
Yeah,
right
it's-
there, okay.
Yep, so this is the 1926, 2007, and then this is the proposed.
And what is it that's going into the spaces back here? And why are the windows so different?
It's a master bed and bath. Those are actually, so those are these two windows. So one in a closet and one over a toilet.
Gotcha. And then the other windows are, that we had talked about that you're reusing on the
It's on the
extension
west.
side, they're going to be placed exactly as they were in the
Yes.
prior?
Yep.
Okay. All right, and then can you show me the elevation of the shed as well
Sure.
from the entry? Which I don't know which the elevation is for that, so I can't even.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. So are those carriage doors, or is that an actual overhead door that's just made to look like a carriage door?
No, they will be carriage doors.
will? Do
3
they
by
have any glass
6
in
feet.
them? I'm sorry, do they have any glass in them?
No, we're not anticipating having glass.
And then at the rear elevation, you seem to have a window up high.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
That is, and that'll be based on the building code. I'm not sure actually if we can have a window there or not, because it's about 3 feet from the property line.
Yeah, I was just wondering why that was happening there.
Yeah, and actually, to that point, if we're not able to do that, we may want to use some with the glass lights on the top portions of the
Okay.
doors.
All right, and then I really have no other questions. I think we've asked with Commissioner Sutton's questions, the other ones that I had. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you.
Any rebuttal? Or, sorry. Right. So we'll close the questions from the commissioners and allow you time to rebut anything that you may have heard, or if you want to add anything to your case. You have 5 minutes. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Well, at this time, we'll close the public hearing and the commissioners will discuss the case. I will start with my commissioners to the right this time.
I think this is consistent with the historic area and have nothing really I'm concerned about.
Commissioner Rice?
I don't have any concerns.
Okay.
I have no concerns.
And Commissioner Sutton?
I have no comment.
Is, other than there being a couple of things about not being sure about the foundation, I think we can probably leave that to be handled by staff in terms of making sure that that's vetted, but I think the drawings are fairly consistent in terms of the level
Yes,
of
they are, I think so.
materiality and trim. And
I think it goes the same way with the windows as well, too. With they're moving, of course, the existing ones, but the new windows seem to be keeping it entirely in character with the ones that are already on the building in itself.
anyone care to make a motion? Are we ready to make
I
a
will
motion?
make a motion. Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 20-154 for the property located at 5708 North Central Avenue, because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Seminole Heights Historic District Design Guidelines of the City of Tampa in proportion and matching the existing historic house and in the setback on the property.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Seeing none, the motion carries, and congratulations. Yes, please. I'm sorry. I thought I heard a comment over there, sorry.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Ron Vila. I'm staff with Historic Preservation. The next case that's reflected on the agenda is ARC 20-160. Can everybody hear me okay? The address is 2006 West Deco Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. Primary structure is a contributing structure that was constructed in 1926. The zoning is RM24. The request is twofold. They're asking for a variance, a reduction for the side yard, which is the west side yard, from 7 to 5.5 inches, with an encroachment for eaves and gutters of 2 feet. And then if that goes forward, then they're going to ask for a certificate of appropriateness for about 80 square feet of an addition for a one-story structure. I spoke with the agent. He should open these together. They kind of meld together, so you get a understanding of what the request is. I'm going to go through a brief photo presentation at this time. Highlighted in the green box is the property in question. The property faces Deco. To the north, you have a series of contributing structures on each side, and then in the rear you have a usable alley. To the west you have Albany, and to the east you have Gumby. Also, what's important on this aerial is they're going to enter into the record some information regarding a tree, and you see the canopy of the tree that is in close proximity to where the addition is going to be requested. This is the Sanborn Map from 1929. Once again, it faces Deco. The primary structure is a two-story structure with an appendage to the west side that almost comes to the property line. That is was constructed in 1926. And then you have an accessory structure that's currently there that matches the footprint of the accessory structure when it was constructed as well. Just briefly showing you the front elevation, vehicular access. This is a small sunroom. Behind this is where the one-story addition is going to take place. There's some vegetation that kind of conceals that, but as you come around to that western side, it's going to continue towards the rear and towards that west property line. Just to give you a feeling for the rest of the structure, this is looking down the drive aisle at a little entry feature. Side elevation, which is the east elevation. You see some of the skirting that takes place here. Surrounding properties, this is to the west. Moving around to the east. And then concluding with the photo presentation across the street. Now this request might look familiar to you as we go to the front elevation. This came in front of this board as in 2019, December 2nd, 2019, and at that time there were two variances that were requested. There was an averaging or vesting for the front yard, which was approved, and then at that time the agent and the owner were present to go forward with a two-story volume behind the sunroom, and the variance at that time was from 7 foot to 5 foot, and that was denied. So they're back in front of you today with a new request. This is ARC 20-160. It was discussed at length with the administrator for preservation, and the administrator has the ability to waive the 12-month waiting period for a request to come forward if they deem that it demonstrates a substantial change to the request. So having a story removed and changing the dimension to the rear property line met that criteria. So that's why it's in front of you again. And that is chapter 27114G and the zoning code. So at this time, I'm going to have the agent present to the board a complete presentation for the variance and their certificate of appropriateness. Thank you.
Good evening. Ralph Schuler with 2401 North Howard Avenue, and I'm the agent for tonight's presentation at 2006 Eagle.
Sorry about that. So we're gonna start with the site plan here, and the site plan that we're proposing to do just a small little bathroom and closet addition, which is here. There's a grand tree just on the other property to the west here. We're going to request a small variance of about 19 inches just for this request, and mainly to be able to get the bathroom and a closet. Currently, the does not have a closet on this side. The elevations of what that would look like the front elevation, of course, is unchanged because we're tucked behind a sunroom. So nothing about the elevation on fronting decal changes at all. The west elevation, we're tucking the structure again behind the sunroom. We do have a corner board here because we are about 14 inches in from this elevation to the new addition for the restroom. Going to the rear elevation, we do have a small window that's basically above the toilet, and if that's really the only window we have, but again, it's an 80 square foot addition. The fascias and the roof are low sloping flat roofed to match what is going on with the rest of the sunroom porch addition. All the other detailing would match that. Let's look at the tree and the conditions in the rear of the property. Again, this little area here is where we're proposing to put the small addition. We have a protected radius here that gets to almost where our addition goes, and then we have some existing windows that this window would be removed and this window would be removed for the addition. All other windows would remain. This is just from a certified arborist. It says it's a grand tree based on the scaling and the points. It needs to be a minimum of 175 points, and he graded it as a 210 point tree. To talk a little bit more about our variance. Again, our variance is a very, very small variance. Previously, we came in with a 2-story addition that was going to come all the way up, and it was only a 1 foot. I'm sorry, it went from a 7 foot to a 5 foot request. This is for only 5 feet 5 inches, and we feel this is a much more in keeping to the scale and massing and architecture of this project, and in particular of the west elevation. So the main reason, of course, why we are requesting this is that the house side yard setback, which is approximately 3'11" from the sunroom to the property line. We don't have any room on the east side. Obviously, we have a driveway. The south side, we have a tree that has a protected radius. So we feel this is just a perfect spot for a diminutive 1-story addition for a modest bathroom and closet. So again, this sunroom predates building code setbacks. Thus, it's only at 3'11". The trunk and grand tree are restricting any realistic addition to any other place. The 1-story addition, again, is very small, is tucked in behind the original sunroom, and we maintain the historic character of the project. With that, I'd like to talk about, I guess, just the approving of the variance, and then we could go into further detail of the architecture.
Commissioners, at this time, if you're ready to move forward, I would discuss the variance request first. On page 4 in your staff report is the language that he submitted into the record, and you could go ahead and expand on that with some questions as well. We do have a letter of support in the record from the abutting neighbor that shares that property line that's closest to where the addition is at, and that's in the file. So at this time, just focus on the variance. If the variance moves forward, then we could move into the certificate of appropriateness.
Ron, I'm sorry, but typically, doesn't the applicant walk through their hardship declarations for the record?
He entered into the record some brief information regarding the variance. If he wants to submit more information, this is the time to do so.
Okay, so he doesn't have to follow this format as we've done in the past?
You can ask him to address them one at a time,
Okay.
or it's a summation of all of them that he could kind of paraphrase as well.
Okay, just 1 second. Just want to make sure that. Can I ask the fellow commissioners if they feel like they need to hear more about this, or can we save that?
I'm sorry, Madam Commissioner, are you going to open this for public comment, or are you ready to close for public comment and then go to the questioning?
Well, I just want to be comfortable with whether or not we've heard everything in the hardship list. We can ask for it later. Okay, so we'll just move forward. We'll go ahead and ask for public comment, and then we'll go ahead. Okay. So at this time, staff will present their report. Correct?
Staff is silent on the variance. The variance is a finding of fact with the information that was presented.
Understood, okay. So we'll move forward to the public comment component in regards to the variance request. If anyone would like to speak for or against the variance for this property, please step forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment regarding the variance on the property, and we'll allow commissioners to ask any questions. We'll start from my right. Commissioner, any questions regarding the variance? Are there any?
Give me just 1 second to read
Sure.
this criteria.
Commissioner Rice? You had stated that the grand tree's branches run to the south, behind the house, prohibiting you from going behind the house,
Yeah.
basically.
I think what this is, this document was actually prepared by our owner.
That shows better.
This is the branch that we're talking about. It actually runs north and east.
Okay, yeah, my terrible directions, but yeah, that's my question. Okay, thank you. Commissioner, do you have any?
May we see the proposed floor plan for the addition?
Any questions or comments, or? No?
No, I think that he could go through this. Would you mind just running through your bullet points of the hardship?
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
I did try to summarize at the end, but I wasn't as precise as you'd want me to be. So the existing sunroof, so I'm going to go through in order here, A, B, C, C being the existing sunroom predates the side yard setback, and therefore we only have about 4 feet, 3.9 feet from the property line. So we have very little room to work with. If we had gone to just the sunroom face, which we know we would want to do less because it's an addition, and we want to pronounce that the sunroom is an original, and we're stepping back, which I think is appropriate. And then hardship 2 is that we have, of course, a grand oak tree that's in close proximity to our project, and is a healthy tree. 3, if the variance is granted, this is a 1-story addition and will not alter the front elevation of the street, and the proposed addition is very small in nature and is be hidden entirely by the sunroom. 4, the variance is in harmony and serves the greater intent and purpose of this chapter, which means, of course, yes, maintaining its historic appearance from the street and maintaining all of the other projects in its close proximity, the tree, and it meets all the guidelines. 5, allowing the variance will result in substantial justice. I think this is about as small as a variance as we could ask for, and it be a functional bathroom. We're not asking for some grand bathroom here. It's about 80 square feet, and it also again is in keeping with this house and the neighborhood. And then 6, the variance, if granted, would allow that is consistent with the design standards. I think this is extremely consistent and is very much in keeping with the historic pattern of the neighborhood. So those are the criteria.
Thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Sutton, do you have any comments regarding the variance component of this case?
No, I do not.
Okay. So at this time, do we want to go ahead and receive or entertain a motion for the
Excuse me, Madam
variance?
Commissioner, do you want to ask if you like to have any rebuttal?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm so sorry. Would either the owner or the agent like to make a rebuttal?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Jeremy, the owner. So we've considered quite a lot of different options. The tree is beautiful. The limb does hang across the back and drapes quite far behind. I think when you're looking at the site plan, it doesn't show the windows out of that lower bedroom. If we put the bathroom behind it, you kind of lose the view and you'd just be staring into the neighbor's RV. If we put it on the other side of the house, it's the back of a kitchen. We don't really want a bathroom and closet on the back of a kitchen. So that was sort of why we were putting it on the side. Functionally, it makes a lot of sense. Definitely heard the comments last time of don't change the appearance, tuck it as much as you can. We also want to respect the tree, so it's outside of that area. Also want to maintain the usefulness of the driveway. So that's why we put it where we put it.
Thank you. And that ends your rebuttal, I assume, yes? Thank you. Right, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and if commissioners would like to discuss the case at all in terms of the variance, any comments?
No, I think they did a good job of tucking it away in the appropriate spot. Agree with that.
Commissioner Rice?
I think that the tree is a unique aspect of this particular site that has having them into one location, and having a second bathroom is not an unreachable request.
Right.
I don't have any comments.
Commissioner Sutton, any points of discussion, or?
I'd like to add just the point that I think they've done a remarkably good job in making this addition fit within, if you will, the confines of the existing building and its perimeter. We are dealing with a part of this existing building that is no longer conforming to current zoning ordinances and their required setbacks. And now this addition, or proposed addition, is coming in, and it's respecting those lines. It's respecting the lines of the building and of the existing site setbacks. So I really don't have a major problem with this addition and the request for the variance that they're looking for. It is all modest in its scope, and it is not public in its appearance.
Okay. Anyone would like to entertain a motion? Are we ready?
I will.
Regarding the variance?
I'll move that variance request for case ARC 20-160 for property located at 2006 West Deacle Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction of the west side yard setback from 7 feet to 5.5 feet with an encroachment of 2 feet for eaves and gutters, based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-114D of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances for granting variances as stated, and the evidence provided in this public hearing, specifically that the brand oak is unique to their site and prohibits them from expanding off the bedroom behind the house, and that the existing house is already well within that setback that was not in existence when the house was built, and this variance is less than the existing house, already encroaches on the setback.
We have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, the variance request is approved. So, we did not close, or we did not have, public comment on the, certificate of appropriateness, so we'll go ahead and open, public comment up on the certificate of appropriateness for the addition.
Madam
Does he need to
Commissioner.
present that?
We need to present
Oh, I'm
that.
sorry. Sorry, sir. Staff.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. So moving to the certificate of appropriateness, the staff report on page 4 reflects that this application is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines. The plans that we reviewed were submitted to us on February 17th, 2020, so it's been a while since we were working on this and moving forward. Staff feels that the submission today meets our criteria. I'd like for Mr. Schuler to go through a wall section and call out all the materials on the exterior to meet the intent of the staff report. Thank you.
We didn't have any public comments, so I'm good to go, right?
You may present the wall section.
Yes.
Thank you.
So it's a wood frame structure, of course. It's on piers. So the piers, of course, would be contemporary in that they're concrete block, but we'd skin them with brick veneer over them. Wood frame with wood siding. The current structure does not have wood siding on it, but we know there's wood siding underneath the vinyl siding, and we did an addition here a few years back that's also wood siding, so we would match that wood siding. That's currently on this addition. Of course, we have a flat roof, so that none of the roof is seen from anywhere in the house on this portion of the addition. The detailing would be identical to what we have, of course, with the sunroom in the way of its overhang. It's a small overhang of only about a foot for the soffits, and then there is a little bit of a detail on the metal drip edge that we would repeat. Other than that, that's the wall section.
Thank you. So can we open this to public comment now, or? Yes, okay. It's a little convoluted tonight, sorry. So we'll go ahead and open up public comment on the certificate of appropriateness for the case. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the hearing, and we'll move to the commissioner's questions. Start with my left, with Commissioner Sutton.
I will continue my comment from before. I thought that the placement of this addition was quite sensitive with respect to the, if you will, the perimeter limits of the existing building. And I find that your intention and how you plan on cladding this and roofing this building is entirely in keeping with what you have for an existing building. So I really have no objection to this proposal.
I appreciate the modifications from the previous submission. It looks really good.
You probably said this, but I might have missed it. The window matches the existing windows on the house?
Yeah, the window would be a wood window. It would match with what the other windows are. The only difference, of course, is because it's a bedroom, a bathroom, it's much smaller.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
No questions.
I don't have any either, thank you. You do have opportunity for another rebuttal if you'd like to enter anything else into the record. No? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing then on the certificate of appropriateness, and commissioners will discuss the case. So again, starting from my left, Commissioner Sutton, is there anything that you?
I have no further comment.
No further comments.
I think it looks good.
Same, looks good.
Okay, so, seeing no discussion points, are we ready to entertain a motion then?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Who would like?
Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 20-160 for the property located at 2006 West Deacle Avenue, because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park Historic Design Guidelines of the City of Tampa in its proportion and its consistency with the existing historic house.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Congratulations.
Commissioners, we are having some difficulty picking up some of your comments over the mic, so if you could speak directly into the mic when you're talking, that may help us. Thank you.
So commissioners, moving forward. The next case reflected is ARC 20-171. This is for the address of 1103 South Rome Avenue. This is also in the Hyde Park Historic District. I'm going to show some photos of the existing structure that was there, but currently it's a vacant site. The zoning is RS 60. It's coming forward for new construction for a single-family residence with an accessory structure and site improvements. And there's 3 variances attached to the request, reflected on page 1 of your staff report. The first variance is a front yard setback reduction from 25 feet to 16 foot 5.5 inches with a 3-foot overhang for the eaves and the gutters. The second variance reflected is on the south side yard from 7 foot to 2 foot. And the third variance is a height increase from 35 foot to 37 feet. I did speak with the agent. He's going to address the variance first. He's going to have 10 minutes as indicated on our rules of procedure. So he's going to address that first. As he goes through his variance on page 4 of your staff report, you could follow along. It starts on page 4, and then he has the rest of his verbiage attached. Just once again, a brief photo presentation. This is the aerial from 2 months ago. Shows it's Richardson is a cross street on the north. Property does face Rome. It's highlighted in the green box here. There is no alley towards the rear of this property. This is the Sanborn from 1929, showing the 3 properties in a row in this skewed parcel. This is the middle one. Once again, you have Richardson to the north and Rome. This is from earlier this year in March, showing the non-contributing accessory structure that was submitted to staff for approval for demolition. Showing the property to the south. This is a 1-story structure. It's non-contributing. This structure is probably about 18 years old. I do recall when this came forward. And then to the north, you also have this non-contributing structure that's on the corner of Richardson and Rome. Directly across the street, you have some historic fabric. This is the intersection of Richardson and Rome, looking to the east. You have these 2 structures here. And just to conclude with a couple street shots, property in question is over here to the right. This is obviously looking towards Bay Shore, and then turning around, looking back into the village. That concludes the photo presentation, and Mr. Keener will move forward with their variance request.
This doesn't work? Good evening. My name is John Keener. I'm agent to the owners at the property at 1103 South Rome Avenue. I am an architect and architect for the project, and I'll be presenting the case this evening. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to start with a quick introduction just to the project. We've got a lot to go over this evening. So we've created three-dimensional models to help understand the scope of the work, the scaling, and the massing as it relates to the neighborhood and the property. This is a view looking from the southeast corner of the property. The north would be to the back of the property. This is the front and the porte-cochere, the front porch that we're requesting an encroachment for. This is the south elevation of the property, southwest corner looking towards the house. The northern elevation of the property, and then the front of the property. As Ron had pointed out, this is the 1929 Sanborn Map. You can see from this that the property that we're developing has no contributing fabric at the point of this map that we reference. It's important to note that the property on Bay Shore and Rome was a large estate property. There was no construction on the 3 lots adjacent to Richardson and Rome. And then as we get north along Rome Avenue, north of Richardson, we have varied pieces of the fabric that have been altered since the time of this map. You also notice that there is a lot of fabric on the east side of the property, but on the west side, it was a little different than the traditional Hyde Park neighborhood fabric. This is the property to the north of our property, located on Richardson and Rome Avenue. What I wanted to demonstrate in this document is that we've got the average setbacks for the entire property. The property to the north is the furthest off of the property of the sidewalk at 35 feet. It's also important to note that there's a grand tree in their front yard, which is part of the reason that that property was constructed where it is on the lot. The red dashed lines indicate where the front building setback currently is, and you can see the footprint of our home on the lot to the south of that. The average lot setback along Rome Avenue from block to block is 25.9 feet. That is including the existing footprint of the house that's on our property. One thing to note is if you took out the last property to our north, the 35-foot, because of that tree, that does skew the numbers. The block average would actually be 24.9 or so if we did not have that one tree holding that property back. This is our subject property. It will be demolished. It's non-contributing one-story ranch home. The property to our south, Ron had mentioned this, it's I would call it sort of a postmodern design, non-contributing as well. Important to note that this property does have a front porch that sets back further than the front property setback. It sits forward of the front property setback. This is new construction located at 1107 South Rome. The property does comply with the building setbacks. It's important to note on this property it does have some cantilevered elements that I do think encroach upon the front setback, but this is new construction, and I think as we demonstrate further in the presentation, I think it shows the ability of scale and massing to relate with the rest of Rome Avenue. This is relatively new construction along one property off of Bay Shore. This has a front-loaded two-car garage to the right. Not something that would be approved by today's board, I don't believe. So I don't think this is a good example of historically appropriate or contributing structure to the fabric of the neighborhood. And then on Bay Shore, we have a newer estate home that was constructed, I'm not sure exactly when, but newer construction. Also has large three-car garage facing Rome Avenue, as well as a three-story element along Bay Shore. The three variances requesting this evening are to reduce the front yard setback from 25 feet to 16 foot 5.5 inches with encroachment of 3 foot for eaves and gutters. We're requesting a south side yard setback from 7 foot to 2 foot with an encroachment of 0 feet for eaves and gutters. And we're requesting a height increase from 35 foot to 37 feet. The diagram on the bottom shows massing and scale of several of the houses along Rome Avenue. Forgive the glare. This is the Bella Roma property at 1001 South Rome. This is within 2 blocks of our property. It's a 4-story condominium project that I believe was built in the 90s that is 50 foot tall from grade to the top of roof. 1011 South Rome was completed construction, I think, in 2017. It is built to the 35-foot height limit. It's a 2-story structure with additional conditioned space in the roof line. The property at 1013 South Rome is there to indicate that there are 1-story ranch homes located along Rome Avenue. There is some older fabric, and then there's also new construction as shown at 1107 South Rome. I think our property, when compared along that line, fits within the scale of the fabric of Rome Avenue and the neighborhood. The first element is related to the setbacks, both in the front yard and the south yard. This diagram is to try and clarify our site plan. The red solid piece is our building setback as it is now. Our property is zoned RS60, which requires a 25-foot front setback for the front yard. The blue portion is the portion of our porch that is encroaching upon that front setback to which we are asking for the variance. As you can see, the diagonal cross line here is indicating the portion of our building that is the conditioned square footage, and then the portion of the blue that is a crosshatch is indicating the portions of our porch and porte-cochere that are encroaching upon the setbacks. I wanted to clearly define that because what we really tried to stress in this is due to the irregular shape of the lot, we wanted to make sure that the conditioned piece of our design was behind that setback line, and only the things that are encroaching were the porches that we're requesting. And that's typical within the fabric of Hyde Park, in my opinion. It's also important to know that the width of our lot is different than what is typically an RS60 lot. The fabric of most of City of Tampa zoning has a 60 by 100 foot lot as the basis for RS60. In this case, even though we have 55 foot of street frontage, we only have a 49 foot, 10.5 inch wide lot. That is one of the hardships that we're presenting this evening. To construct a home that requires to have garage and parking in the rear when you don't have an alley really limits how much space you can fit within the buildable footprints, because we have to push the entire house either to the north or to the south to accommodate a drive aisle. So in a case like this, I would think that more often than not, when you have a less than 50-foot wide lot, you might be considered an RS50 zoning versus RS60. And that would give you a lot more flexibility as far as how you could design a house on this property. One thing also to note is that the front porch on the most northern part of our property is actually behind the front setback. We are from the property line to the corner 28 feet from the property line. As we go to the actual conditioned portion of the corner of the house, that's actually 34 feet from the front setback. So it's the irregular shape of the lot that creates the hardship that we're asking for a reduction in the front setback. And also on the side, to create that covered porte-cochere that is the very fabric of Hyde Park, We're requesting the reduction in the side setback to allow us to have a covered drive porte-cochere. This diagram is also to enforce just three-dimensionally to help you guys understand where the areas of the encroachment actually occur. The red volume is there to show what the building footprint, buildable footprint would be, and then the areas that aren't in the red are the areas that stick outside of that. It's also important to know that the accessory garage does meet the criteria for an accessory structure and does not need to comply with the same setback regulations. This diagram is to also show that as we discussed the height increase down the road in the presentation, it's also important to note that we are not requesting a height increase for the design as it stands today. The house does comply with zoning today. Our height increase is related to how the FEMA flood maps may change in the next 6 months to a year. And so we'll address that further in the presentation. But as the house designs today and the house we're presenting to you meets zoning guidelines, and the only areas that encroach on the 35-foot height limit are architectural features. Is that my time limit?
That is your time limit.
Excuse me, Madam Commissioner, if I may. Mr. Keenan, do you have, Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office, do you have physical documents of everything that you displayed on your iPad?
I do.
Okay, we just need to make sure that we have a copy of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, we'll go to the staff. Oh, there's no staff report on variance, sorry. We'll go to public comment on the variance request for this case.
Do you want to give him more time to present?
Can we get a variance?
I believe so.
Staff, I'm sorry. Can we add time to the variance presentation?
I believe he was wrapping it up at this time. If you would ask him for a summation, maybe you give him a couple minutes just to tie everything together.
Okay.
I move to grant additional time for the variance.
How much time?
Do you?
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
5 minutes would be more than enough time. Getting to the end of this, I do
Okay.
appreciate that. It would be
Make a
helpful to
motion
present
to
our case.
Give the applicant 5 more minutes.
Yes.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Next portion of this was just giving context of the site. The areas highlighted are different parts of Hyde Park. Obviously, we all know Hyde Park Village, Rome Avenue, Selman Expressway, South Howard Avenue, Bayshore Boulevard. What's important to note is that our property sits on one of the busiest thoroughfares in this area. Bayshore Boulevard is a highly trafficked highway. Howard Avenue and Rome Avenue are the main corridors to get to Bayshore from inside the neighborhoods of Hyde Park. This is looking to the south towards Bayshore, looking to the north towards Hyde Park Village. This is more indicative of a typical situation on Rome Avenue. There's parking on both sides of the road. There's a lot of traffic back and forth, bike riders, pedestrians, vehicles all day long along Rome Avenue. As I mentioned earlier, the 50-foot wide lot comes into play. If we were zoned RS50, as a typically 50-foot lot would be, we would have had a 20-foot front setback and allowed an 8-foot front porch encroachment upon that. So the red area would indicate that if we were zoned RS50, we wouldn't even need to request these this front porch setback. The areas to the north of us, the house to the north of us, even with the grand tree setback, our property, the main massing of our house sits about 3'8" from the corner of this house and is about 1'2" behind the front conditioned space of the house to our north. So we're not impeding upon any of the views towards Roman Avenue or even towards Bayshore with this request. The areas, the buildings, I'm sorry, to the north of us that are highlighted are also encroaching upon the 25-foot setback from Rome Avenue. Bella Roma is 13 foot on Rome and 8 foot on Hills Avenue, also 50 foot tall. And then there's some multifamily townhouses just north of that that are also less than 25 feet. The property on Rome Avenue, one block to the north, had an existing encroachment that was vested, and that also is 10 foot 11 from the sidewalk. A very similar case to what we're presenting, where we're asking for a front porch encroachment because of the angular nature of the lot. This house is keeping in scale and was approved in 2015. The south yard setback from 7 foot 2 foot is because of the open porte-cochere request that fits within the fabric of Hyde Park. The porte-cochere is 2 feet from the property line, but the main massing of the house sits further off of the setback. These are all examples within one block of our property of setback reductions for open porte-cocheres that are all historic context, with the exception of the house in the bottom right. That's new construction, but it also has a less than 7 foot side setback. The height increase is related to the flood elevation changing. We don't have a hard date on when that map will be adopted by FEMA. Currently, we are allowed a 35-foot height for a house. Right now, the first floor elevation is allowed to be built at 11 feet. Our average grade is in the nature of 7 foot 6 inches from the zero datum. Come this fall or next spring or whenever the new FEMA maps will be adopted, we're going to be required to raise the first floor elevation 2 feet above where it currently sits. The nature of our request is really contingent upon that happening in the next 4 to 5 months prior to us finishing drawings. COVID has kind of thrown the economic nature of this project into a little bit of question marks, so we're trying to buy ourselves some time. It's not that we necessarily need to design this house any taller, we don't wish to, but if for some reason we can't get into permitting before this flood map changes, then we're into a precarious situation where we need significant redesign, and will set my clients back, time and energy. This is just to show that the scale works with the neighborhood of Hyde Park. This is the parking garage on the far north end of Rome Avenue. Clearly more than 3 stories, and it still fits within the fabric of Hyde Park. This is another newer construction that also exceeds 35 feet that has been approved in the past. These are all taller structures in the area with 3-story or more tower elements. And this also shows the scale of the property 1 block to the north against our property, and very similar in nature, and just 2 different styles of architecture. So that concludes my variance presentation. Thank you for the additional time.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and ask for public comment in the variance. I know that we started to ask for that, but with the time extension, I wanted to allow if anybody wanted to come up, and seeing no one moving forward, we'll go ahead and close that, and we'll start with commissioners.
Sarah, you've got, she's going to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you raise your hand? I'm sorry. I didn't see anybody raise their hand.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
You have to turn the switch on.
Sir, could you turn the microphone on?
How about that?
Better.
No, it's not working. I don't.
No,
Is it working now?
Yep. Now it is. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Architectural Review Commission. My name is John Grandoff. I practice at the Hill, Ward & Henderson Law Firm. I'm a member of the Florida Bar. I'm also joined this evening by my clients, Laurel and Bob Gramick. Laurel Gramick is with me this evening. Laurel, will you please raise your hand? Madam Chair, may I have the fairness of extra time also, since Mr. Keener develop more evidence? I'd like to have an opportunity to respond to his evidence as well.
Typically, I think we have to have a form that's been submitted that shows that someone's giving up their time to add to his time.
What I mean is you granted him extra time to present his evidence. I would likewise like to have extra time besides the 3 minutes.
That's only allowable if someone else gives up their time to you, and that's usually done through a form.
That's not what I meant. Mr. Keener asked for a courtesy of the board to give him more time, and you gave that to him. I want the same courtesy. Since he had more time to put in his evidence, I need more time to respond to his evidence.
Staff
Sir,
or legal
you're burning
answer
through your
that
time.
question, please.
Now, my time's not running yet. It's a point of order.
Sir, if you, and just for the record, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel, Assistant City Attorney, if you would like to start your public comment, and if you...
Sure, I will. If I can do it in 3 minutes, I will, but...
Then we can address it at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Here's a photograph. Laurel's property is right here on the corner, looking south to Bayshore Boulevard. To give you some perspective, Mr. Keener talked about the grand trees. These trees are a complete red herring. They have nothing to do with the hearing this evening. Those are on my client's property. Laurel's father, distinguished Judge James Lindfest, he bought this property in 1976, subject to the Richardson Place subdivision. Now, why do I bring that up? Well, because if we look at a survey that was prepared recently and certified by a surveyor, the survey of the Lindfesti-Gramick property shows a 20-foot building setback line. Now, where'd that come from? That came from the plat of Richardson Place, which was platted in 1915. Here's Richardson Place. November 9th, 1915. And Richardson Place, if you'll notice, was laid out looking south on Rome with a 20-foot building line created by plat to preserve what? The view to Bayshore. Now, Mr. Keener's plans are interesting. Let me back up. Mr. Keener's client takes title to this property subject to the covenants, conditions, restrictions, reservations, limitations, and easements of Richardson Place. He's on notice of this 20-foot platted lot line, 1915. Now, Mr. Keener showed you his plans. His March 16 set shows the platted setback. There it is. And also the zoning setback. I'm talking about two setbacks today, or 2 yards. There's a zoning yard, which is 25 feet, enforced by the city. There's a platted yard, 20 feet, which is enforced by circuit court injunctive relief by my client. And that is her remedy if Mr. Keener insists on building this building in violation of the plat and in violation of the zoning. So on that plan in March 16, he shows the platted lot line, he shows the zoning lot line. Now, mysteriously, his current plans that are before you this evening do not show the platted lot line anymore. Now, why did that happen? Perhaps ask Mr. Keener on rebuttal why you're not shown the platted lot line when he argues to you that this building fits within the scale and fabric of Hyde Park. If it fit within the scale and fabric of Hyde Park, he'd show you the plat. That is history. That is 1915. That is what Judge Lindfesti took title to. He took title to a 20-foot front yard that they're asking you to allow him to violate. That is illegal. You cannot base a variance upon a personal preference because you want more height, because you want more width, because you want a front yard that breaks into Rome Avenue past the 20-foot platted lot line, which violates the view to Bayshore. That's why we have platted lot lines. In 1915, we didn't have zoning. May I have some more time, counsel?
How should we address that, please?
Yes, again, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. If the commission would like to give him more time to address the board, you can certainly give him more time.
Okay. You want to give him 3 more minutes?
Perhaps an additional 3 minutes.
I move to grant 3 additional minutes to the public hearing.
Second motion.
I'll second the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, none. You have 3 additional minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
In 1915, a platted lot line was created at 20 feet. We didn't have zoning in the city of Tampa until 1959. Platted lot lines were private zoning, and that's how you enforced building restrictions and created light, air, and space to have a view down to Bayshore Boulevard. Zoning codes simply did what we've been doing for years. And remember, this gentleman took title to his property subject to the covenants, and he should have shown those to you on the site plan. And you need to consider that as part of the hardship criteria. The fact that there's something of record since 1915 does not create a hardship. I'm sorry. It has to be something unique to the land, like a tree in the middle of the lot that you can't build around. not a platted lot line that you took title to and which Judge Lindfest took title to, and his property has respected since then. This issue about the height being based upon the FEMA rule that may change in the future is completely wrong. You do not base a variance today on how the law may or may not change in the future. That's the risk we all bear. That is nothing unique with the property. The building has to be 35 feet. The neighbors are at 35 feet. They get their drives in on the side yard. They make it work. This is too much building on too little land. It's an RS-60 property. They have over 6,000 square feet of land, which was the minimum lot size. He can make it fit. It's not the way they exactly want it, but they can respect the 20-foot platted lot line. And they can respect the 25-foot zoning lot line. There is no hardship just because you want it, just because it needs to be more profitable, just because you spent X dollars on the land and you have to return. You are not here to solve their economic problem. You're here to respect the zoning code, to respect the Hyde Park guidelines, which part and parcel include plats that were laid on the ground in 1915 for a reason, to prevent obstruction of view. There's the water. See the water? Obstruction of view. This is the respected lot line. This is the building that will be demolished that respects it. This gentleman came on the land on notice of what the rule was. He's not here to ask you, cannot come here ask you to bail him out because he wants to build a bigger house. I submit to you the variance criteria of hardship is entirely personal, is not unique to the land, and I ask that you deny the variances this evening. Thank you for your time and for the extra time.
Thank you, sir. If you want to use that podium, it's probably good.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is James McGuire. I live at 1708 West Richardson Place, which is the house at 1103 Rome is one house down from the corner of Richardson. Once you turn the left onto Richardson, I'm the first house on the left. So the property at 1103 South Rome abuts the eastern border of my house, border of my yard. I oppose the variance, and in some ways I would echo what was just said here, that as I heard the discussion this evening, the purpose, the alleged hardship for the variance was it's sort of a small lot and it's kind of irregularly shaped. That may or may not be true, but what they're trying to put in there is a gargantuan structure. The structure they're trying to put in there appears to be at least 3 times the size of the current structures that's there, including a 2-level garage with a lift in it. They are trying to squeeze not just a square peg into a round hole, but a gargantuan square peg into a small round hole. I oppose this vehemently. There are different issues as well about the appropriateness of this, but the way this thing's going to be built, in my backyard, I'm basically going to see a huge concrete block, like the screen at a drive-in movie theater, because they are trying to fit so much structure into this property. What they ought to do is build a structure that fits with the property and fits with the neighborhood. I think it would be an enormous disadvantage to the neighbors on both the north and south, and me to the west as well. So I oppose the variance. I ask you to deny the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forth speaking for or against the variance requests? Seeing no others, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period, and we'll follow with the commissioners asking questions. Let's start with my right.
So you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, you have a rebuttal.
I thought rebuttal came after we asked questions.
No, does it?
That's
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's
sorry.
on my
I'm sorry.
sheet.
You're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All right, that's okay. So we'll go ahead, starting on my right. Any questions for the applicant?
Sure. If you could talk a little bit more about the reason for this third variance for the height. Tell me a little bit more about the FEMA map as it is today. No, I can't hear you.
All
All right, so FEMA dictates in flood regions like this one where the first floor elevation of the house can be. We're in a unique time period because the city of Tampa was going to adopt these codes. FEMA goes through an extensive period of several years of publishing maps, allowing public to comment, and then through bureaucracy, they end up initiating these maps. This was supposed to happen, there were rumors last fall, got delayed to the beginning of the year. COVID came up, it's being delayed further. Rumors that it was supposed to happen the fall of 2020. It might happen spring of 2021. Nobody has an answer for this, but it's a case where we're recognizing we're trying to get ahead of an issue. This is something that we can solve in other ways with the City of Tampa zoning. There's a thing allowed as a design exception 2, which allows for a 20% increase in height for things like this that come up. That would make our house compliant should the flood maps change. We originally presented that to the staff and zoning. They asked us to present this to the board just to keep everything above the board and make sure that everybody understood the predicament we're in. We would certainly be open to the idea of the board suggesting that if this comes up and this is a need, that we would be allowed to pursue this as a design exception 2. We would also try to do everything in our power to eliminate the need for this to even come up, but we're trying to cover our bases because the worst thing for us would be to have to come before the board 6 months from now because the flood maps changed without our knowing. So the purpose of that request is strictly to allow us to still be able to construct this house as closely designed as possible should those flood maps change in the next, well, hopefully they don't change by fall, but that would be the reason for it.
So what if they don't change?
When the flood maps don't change, we're going to keep the house as designed, and we don't need that additional height. We don't intend to build
So you'll stay
any
at 35
height.
feet?
Yes.
And could you show me the picture again where it shows the porte-cochere and how that goes from the 7 to 2?
Sorry, could you move your iPad over so you're out of the glare? You did that before. Keep pushing it. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
So you can see on, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So you can see on the southern piece of the property, this is our property line. It comes to 2 feet to the property line to allow enough room to drive a car through into our motor court in the rear. A lot of times in Hyde Park, you have an alley to access the accessory structure, to which case something like this wouldn't be needed. But on the cases where accessory structures are in the rear, front-loaded garages, it's very typical in Hyde Park to have a porte-cochere to allow somebody to come into the house undercover before getting to the rear. I think it's very clear when you look at this house from a site planning perspective that it looks like any other house that could fit in the Hyde Park neighborhood. It has all of the same elements as many of the homes in those areas.
Have you considered any other way to fit that porte-cochere within the 7 feet?
Yes, ma'am. There really isn't a way to get a house to fit within the setback lines and still have a porte-cochere. The alternative to that would be if we do not get the side setback reduction, the porte-cochere would then probably come off of the design.
Okay. And then for the first one, from the 25 to 16 and a half, how much of that is the front porch?
You can also see in this diagram, the blue area is all of the area of front porch. You can see a crosshatch that are squares. That crosshatch is all of the porte-cochere in the front porch area and then the blue area is the area that is outside of the 25-foot setback.
Have you considered just making the front porch smaller, shorter, I should say?
Yes.
Just come in.
Yes, ma'am. We have. again, coming to the odd shape of the lot, the challenge to us in any floor plan is we looked at multiple ways to enter the garage. Our first challenge was how do we get a two-car garage somewhere on site? The only way we can get an approved plan to do that would be to come towards the rear of the property. We did look at ways to try and squeeze this down, but once you account for the depth of the garage, motor court to turn around and then come back out to Rome Avenue, it really limits the depth of the home. So that's why it's sort of pushed forward, and the reason for the front porch request reduction.
What is the floor-to-floor height in the house?
We have 9'8" on the first floor, 9 foot on the second floor, and 9 foot on the third floor.
And the hatch, does the hatch pattern indicate a covered, like a roof on the plans? Because it appears that there's a covered portion from the garage to the house.
Yes, ma'am. There is a covered connection. I'll show a better view of that.
So then if you didn't have the porte-cochere, you would still have cover from the garage to the house?
Yes, ma'am. You can see it in this area.
Okay, that's my questions. Thank you.
Moving on to my left, any questions for the applicant in regards to the variance?
I don't believe so.
Commissioner Sutton?
I have no question.
I have none.
Excuse me, I just want, Kamaria Pettis-Mack from the city, I just want to remind the board that to focus on specifically the variance request number 3, to focus only on the hardship criteria and not any consideration regarding FEMA.
Yep.
Any potential change regarding FEMA. And that, I just want to put that on the record, to only focus on the hardship criteria.
Thank you.
Then
Great.
I have an additional question then. What is your hardship criteria for that variance?
For the height?
Other than FEMA, do you have any other points?
No, that was our hardship was strictly related to the FEMA
Okay, thank you.
map change.
All right, so you do have 5 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like to respond to anything that's been said.
Yes, ma'am, I would. One of the comments was brought to your attention related to apparently my deception of you guys with my site plan and the platted setback. That is not our intent by any means. The rationale for that is when we received the survey originally, it does have a 20-foot platted line on there. Upon the HPDRC, which is the process related to coming before you today, we meet with zoning, we meet with the different departments of the city. The reason that line's taken off is because the city doesn't recognize 20-foot platted setbacks. Zoning, upon confirmation this morning, even on the phone, does not recognize these as setbacks. The other thing to note, and I do have the plat here, and it's not something I'm trying to hide from anybody, this dashed line shows that 20-foot platted setback that is in Richardson Place. If we're going to start cherry picking when we're going to enforce this, we need to look back at the Sanborn map. The areas circled are, I don't have a scale to this, but I'm pretty sure this house does not meet that 20-foot plat, and this is from 1929 Sanborn. I can also assure you that on the corner here, there's a very large estate home that does not meet that 20-foot plat, building plat by any means. So if we're going to start recognizing this in 2020, we need to go back and start looking at potential lawsuits for all of these other people in Richardson Place that are already encroaching upon these setbacks. So our act was not to deceive. We just clearly, upon confirmation from City of Tampa zoning as not recognizing this, we don't feel that it was pertinent to add to the record. And that concludes my rebuttal.
Thank you, sir. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and commissioners will discuss the case, starting from my left with Commissioner Sutton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to go over this a little bit. We're dealing with a request for variances for 2 different types of yard setbacks. Personally, I find a new construction on what is appropriately called raw land. This is basically a piece of property where existing structures are being demolished, and have that new construction not meet existing and currently established and enforced zoning limitations, which would include setbacks, is a little bit over the top. I don't think it's entirely appropriate for us to be considering a proposal that so blatantly disregards those minimum regulation requirements. The third item on this, being the height increase, is technically not needed under the current regulations, and should not even be under consideration at this point in time. Even as a term of a hardship, that hardship does not exist at this point in time. So as long as it's on this list, I would be lumping it all together as elements not appropriate to the Hyde Park development regulations.
Thank you, Commissioner Sutton.
I agree. I appreciate the desires of the homeowner. However, the setbacks precede the purchase or the design of this residence. Although we haven't seen the certificate of appropriateness presentation, it does appear to have significant square footage that could maybe be adjusted to fit within the current code.
And again, and I'm sorry, Kamaria Pettis-Mackle for the city, it's important for the board to only consider the hardship criteria for the variance and not any consideration about the certificate of appropriateness and whether or not the variance should be approved.
Understood. Thank you.
Understood. So the design, the limited design that we have seen appears that perhaps it could be reconfigured to abide by the code.
Commissioner Rice?
I agree that I think it's to Commissioner Sutton's point that it's a blank site. You can design anything to fit within the existing setbacks. And I do think it's very important to meet, especially that 25-foot setback on the front that allows all the neighbors to have a view to Bay Shore and for just that consistent line down the street. So the building, even in the example shown to us, really seemed to kind of encroach right into that setback.
Agreed. I really don't see any presentation of an actual hardship. Just the need to park in the rear doesn't really create a hardship.
Any other comments? Any discussion points? Okay. I'm sorry. So it feels like we're ready to entertain a motion. Would
Sure.
anyone like to?
I have a question. Do we have to make a motion separately for each variance, or we list them all at once, or how does?
You could list them, just you have to put your
List them
reasons.
all.
Right.
Okay. I can make a motion.
Can I consult with my client for a minute outside? Or do I have the opportunity to continue at this point?
Continue your request
For a variance?
Versus going to vote, could we continue if we wanted to?
Continue a variance?
For what purpose?
If we could alter our design to perhaps be more sensitive?
You would have to change the variance, right?
Okay, I was just. wasn't
The board needs to proceed on the vote based on how it's.
The variance
is
presented.
presented.
But I thought that we can continue this.
And I'm sorry, and I don't, if you could just go to the microphone so that it's recorded on the record.
Hi, Chris Salamone, one of the property owners. So my understanding was that we can continue this before a vote is taken on the variances, because if the vote is taken and it's a no, then we have to wait a year for a similar variance. So we would like to continue at this point in time.
Kate Wells, Chief Assistant City Attorney, just to jump in here with regard to the process. Certainly the applicant can request a continuance of the hearing on the variance. I would submit to the applicant if the intent is to look at how to redesign the project to either eliminate or reduce some of those variances. That would be the purpose. I believe that would be the purpose of the continuance. Otherwise, I don't know why it would be necessary to continue if you're not going to reconsider the approach with the design that's driving the need for all three variances.
I think the idea is to redesign, but it's not to take off the table a front yard setback or a side yard setback. I mean, we can accommodate parking in the back with this irregular shaped lot, so I'm not sure how this is not meeting the Hyde Park criteria.
Well, that's a separate issue, because right now the only part of the application that's being considered are the variances and not the design of the home and whether or not it meets with the design guidelines for Hyde Park. I would submit to the commission if the applicant is seeking a continuance in order to reconsider the design, perhaps reduce the or modify the request for the variances, then it would be appropriate to consider the request for continuance. But if the intent is not to revise the variances as requested, you've had a complete public hearing this evening, and it would be appropriate to consider the matter.
Right, the plan is to revise what you first stated. So if you can consider a continuance, and then we can just come back in a month with a redesigned plan.
With a redesigned plan that eliminates the variances?
Yeah, I mean, that's the attempt that we're gonna go back and.
With a
So
redesigned
even if the
plan,
variance
with a
is
redesigned
designed-
plan and revised variance request, because the
I have
point
a
that's being
question.
made here tonight is if you come back with the same variance request that we have tonight, we've already gone through the public hearing components for that.
So even if the variances get denied, could he not come back and not ask for the variances?
He just doesn't want to wait the full year.
Does he have to wait a year, I guess is my question, if he
Unless
doesn't need the variance?
As with the application you saw earlier this evening where a variance had been denied, and in order to work around the 12-month delay, they modified the design, and Mr. Fernandez determined that the changes in the design addressed the basis for the denial and allowed the application to move forward under the 12-month period. That would be applicable here as well.
As long as there was significant enough change, that's what we understood from the first hearing today.
Yeah,
The first
in
meeting.
addressing the stated basis for the denial based upon the comments of the commissioner, I think that's the direction that the commission is going in. If a continuance were granted this evening to a date certain, as long as the requested variances are less than what is being requested this evening, it would not be necessary to renotice.
They will be less than what we asked for.
I think the intent for our property would be to request a reduced or less of a reduction in the setback for at least the front, and therefore allow us to address that and then come back and present a less obtrusive variance as well as the certificate of appropriateness at that point.
So the request is to continue, that's what you'd prefer, and to continue until when?
Next available hearing.
That's Wednesday.
Next, next available hearing that we've appropriately noticed for.
The next available hearing would be August
August.
3rd, if it's the pleasure of the board. August 3rd would be the next available hearing.
We have the option to continue or not continue, correct?
Mhm.
She's gonna answer that question.
Kate Wells,
I'm sorry.
Chief Assistant City Attorney. The applicant has requested a continuance, so I would submit to the commission it would be appropriate to consider that request. If it's continued, then the remainder of the application would be continued to, I believe, August 3rd is the first available date. If the continuance is denied, then it would be appropriate to vote on the variances as presented.
Maybe just have one moment, please. Ma'am, one moment.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
If I may, Kate Wells, for the record, John Grandolph has requested to be heard on the request for continuance before the board votes on that request.
I thought you guys had to vote on that.
He'd like to address, that's fine.
Do we have to make a motion? for him
Wait,
to
do we have to make a motion, though, to allow him to speak, though? Because this
To
is out
reopen
of,
the public.
this is out of order.
I think typically when there is a request for continuance, if you've had members of the public speak to the item, it would not be inappropriate to get their sentiments on a request for continuance. And to the extent members of the public wish to address the commission, I respectfully request that you come up to the podium and not simply speak from parts of the meeting room where what you're saying cannot be heard.
So I would like to make a motion to give Mr. Randolph 3 minutes to address the continuance.
Second the motion? Anyone?
I second the motion.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I will not take 3 minutes. I simply want to offer to you that if the intent of the petitioner is to return with a less of a variance than has been requested, but variances anyway, we're going to object again. We want no variances at all, especially a variance that violates the platted lot line, which we can enforce through injunctive relief. I just don't want to waste your time, because we're going to return on April 3rd. If the variance is requested on the front or the height or the side, we're objecting again. So this is not a horse trading session. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public comment that wishes to speak on the continuance? All right, we'll go ahead and close that. So I think it's a matter of whether or not, whether or not the commission wishes to entertain other than the continuance.
I think we have to make a motion and then vote on it.
Well, we either have to make a motion for denial or a motion for continuance.
Well,
Or approval,
I'm sorry.
whatever
Motion for
we
vote.
feel. A motion for vote or approval or denial
I'm sorry,
or continuance,
City,
correct?
Madam Attorney,
So-
don't we have to do a motion for the continuance
Right,
and then
that's-
vote on that
yes.
and then, okay.
Okay, good point, yes.
So.
You want to make a motion for
No.
continuance? Go for it.
I can try.
Are we doing a motion for continuance?
We're voting on the motion for
We have to deal with the
continuance.
issue of the continuance.
Okay, all right. Go ahead. Gotcha.
Hang on. Okay. I move that the variance request for the case of ARC 20-171 located at 1103 South Rome Avenue for a front yard setback from 25 to 16 and 5.5 inches with encroachment of 3 feet for eaves and gutters, as well as south side yard setback from 7 to 2 feet with an encroachment of 0 for the eaves and gutters, as well as a height increase from 35 to 37. Be continued to the August 3rd, 2020 public hearing at 6 p.m. to allow the petitioner or staff to gather more information.
What's the information we're requesting?
Just to,
Is there a second?
Do I hear a second?
Motion would die for lack of a second.
Seeing none, the motion for continuance and the variance request is denied. The commission shall now vote, entertain a motion for denial or acceptance of the variance request as discussed during this public hearing in the case. Who would like to enter a motion? Into
Just a clarification point, the motion to continue was not denied, it failed for lack of a
Sorry.
second.
Pardon.
I will move that a variance request for case ARC 20-171 for the property located at 1103 South Rome Avenue. Hang on, let me find the variances. For a front yard setback from 25 feet to 16 feet, 5.5 inches with encroachment of 3 feet for eaves and gutters. A south yard setback south side yard setback from 7 feet to 2 feet with an encroachment of 0 feet for eaves and gutters, and a height increase from 35 feet to 37 feet be denied due to the failure of the petitioner to meet the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria as set forth in 27-114D of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, specifically that there are not alleged hardships or practical difficulties that are unique and singular with respect to the property or with respect to the structure or building thereon, and there are not those suffered in common with other property structures or buildings similarly located.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, the variance is denied. The variance request is denied.
Madam Commissioner, at this time, can we please have a 5 to 10 minute
Okay,
recess?
one moment, please. Before we have a recess, we still have to deal with the certificate of appropriateness. That's still on the table, so we do need a motion to continue the certificate of appropriateness. And that would be once again to August 3rd.
Okay. Would anyone like to?
I move to grant a continuance in the case of ARC 20-171 for the property located at 1103 South Rome Avenue to the August 3rd, 2020 public hearing at 6 p.m.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, your certificate of appropriateness is moved to August 3rd.
Continue to August.
Continue to August 3rd. Thank you.